Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest developments in the Gaza Strip, Judea, Samaria, in Syria, Lebanon, Iran, much more to discuss, particularly ahead, of course, of the UN General Assembly next week, when we are also expected to hear some European leaders declaring their recognition of a Palestinian state. What does it actually mean on the ground? We do have to, of course, as usual, highlight that today we mark day 714 since the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates perpetrated the heinous crimes against the populations of southern Israel on October 7th of 2023. And since then, we still have 48 hostages in Hamas captivity, whom we're, of course, all praying and hoping for their speedy return back to their loved ones, both living and those who were murdered during their time in captivity. But before all of our discussions, let's introduce our experts for today, to include Brigadier General in Reserve Radik Shafir, formerly an Israel Air Force commander. Next to him, retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmett, formerly an Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs. And last but certainly not least, Major General in Reserve Gershon Cohen, a former commander of the defense colleges in Israel. Of course, we can go on and on with all of your curriculum vitae as usual, but we won't have enough time to articulate all of that. So we'll start with you, General Shafir. We are looking at an ongoing effort by the IDF to deepen its operational achievements in Gaza City. Reports of roughly 1,200 targets already struck by the IDF since the onset of Gideon's Chariots, Operation Gideon's Chariots 2. What can you tell us about the complexities at hand at a time when there are other operations also taking place in other locations, including in southern Gaza, where we saw, unfortunately, the death of yet another, this time 4 IDF soldiers, as a result of an improvised explosive device, namely an IED?
I think the strategic outlook is pretty clear, and it's putting pressure on Hamas to capitulate and probably giving up the idea of getting the hostages out alive. At least this is what comes out, whether the government says it or not. This is what it looks like. When we go down to the smaller tactical details, think of a very centered town or city with high-rise buildings, a lot of rubble of previous bombings, and terrorists that may be hiding either above the ground or below the ground in well-established tunnels. And the infantry are advancing at a slow pace, and at any time they could be attacked by the guerrillas or have these mines exploded, different types of munitions exploded at them. And this is in a house-to-house operation that requires a lot of meticulous planning because there are civilians in the area. The army does not want to have or wants to have a minimal involvement of what we call uninvolved citizens. That's why they're pushing them back south and trying to fight Hamas, who are intermixed with the civilians. So this is why it's very slow, because military-wise, well, we could bomb the hell out of Gaza City and raze it to the ground, or regardless of what's there underground, either hostages or civilians. But obviously, this is not something that anybody would want to do. Certainly not the military, not the chief of staff, and that dictates the slow movement and get to the point where Hamas is pressed hard enough to to be more flexible in its decision to give back the hostages and give up, I would say, its dominance, its military dominance in Gaza itself. These are the main points that Israel wants to have addressed. Whether it is possible or not, whether it will succeed or not, that remains to be seen.
Well, quite frankly, we're not Russians, we're not Syrians, we're not Iranians or Sudanese for that matter. We don't bomb indiscriminately into cities and towns, in contrast to the narratives fueled by disinformation that are being disseminated in the public sphere these days. Unfortunately, during times of wars, the famous Senator Hiram Johnson in 1918 said prior to the American entry into World War I, the first casualty when war comes, it happens to be the truth. Now, General Kimmett, when we're looking, however, at the situation in Gaza City from a humanitarian perspective, it seems that the IDF is yet again being more successful than anybody expected or claimed could result in some type of catastrophe. Over 450,000 Gazan residents of Gaza City, particularly, have already relocated through humanitarian corridors that were set up by the IDF into both the central Gazan camps as well as southern Gaza.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with you on that particular point. The scale of the humanitarian assistance that Israel has given in conflict zones is incredible. I would argue that the United States, in some of its toughest fights, city fighting in places such as Manila, could have placed and perhaps placed more emphasis on humanitarian assistance. They did it pretty much block by block, but not to the scale that Israel has done in this operation in Gaza.
So, explain to me where's the disconnect between what actually is happening on the ground to what is being claimed by so many European actors, by others that keep calling for unhindered humanitarian access into Gaza City at a time when even the method is not necessarily in accordance with Israel's wishes, considering taking even into account the Geneva Convention, where, based on the last paragraph of that Article 23 on the uh, humanitarian aid or consignments entering into war zones, highlights that the aggressor supposedly into the specific territory is the one who ultimately dictates the methods in which the humanitarian aid does enter into the civilian areas of that conflict.
Yeah, I mean, the UN is quite clear on this. The occupying force has responsibility for humanitarian assistance over the occupied. And that's, to my view, that's exactly what Israel has been doing. But look, I think we all know the answer to the question. The information battle space is being used just as the physical battle space is being used. And it's clear that whether it's anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, for whatever reason, it would appear that the little people inside of Gaza are being trampled by the large nation state of Israel. I mean, it's just, we've seen this before. We don't need to waste any time talking about how information is distorted in the battlefield, particularly in a situation where you've got a very large attacking force and a very small defending force.
Absolutely. Well, it is important to note, however, that the main culprits in this war of information include Qatar, include Turkey, include Russia, include China. And China is not doing this for hatred of Israel, but rather it views this as a great opportunity to taint its main rival, namely the greatest backer of Israel, the United States of America, during the age of strategic power competition. So it has a broader scale that needs to be brought into context here, which I think needs to be pointed out. Yes, General.
Yeah, Jonathan, I wouldn't, I mean, I would include those as people that have done this, but certainly not exclusive. Europe has never been, candidly, on the long-term support of Israel during any of its conflicts in the last 25 to 50 years.
That is correct. Well, General Cohen, let's drive into the operational. Right now, the IDF is deepening its operational successes. There is already talk of quite a large number of terror operatives eliminated, significant terror infrastructure eradicated on a number of locations throughout Gaza City and also in the surrounding vicinity. What can you tell us about that?
First of all, I think that before just describing the details, how IDF treating every obstacle, every tunnel, every uh, trap that is prepared to kill the soldiers, uh, the whole scenario is very similar to the last battle in Berlin. This is a way that we are understanding that Hamas perceiving that battle. They are really conceiving that that battle will be the last one, and they are taking it as a fatal one. And one of the concepts of Islam is what is called sabr. It means to be patient, to succeed to contain the sufferness just 1 hour more than your enemy. It means that they are expecting that with the difficulties that they will engage and face to the IDF troops, and with the Israeli public criticism against the prices that IDF must pay, there will be a public pressure in Israel to stop the offensive campaign, and then they will survive without letting the Israelis to accomplish the mission. And why it is so important to describe that last battle in analogy to Berlin, because in the last battle in Berlin, the Nazis regime succeeding to collect teenagers and older people who equipped them with Panzerfaust, it's a kind of RPG, anti-tank rocket, and they succeeded really to kill around 80,000 Russian soldiers from the Red Army. And all of that battle, from the German point of view, was not in order to save Berlin or to save Germany. It was just in order to remark a kind of honorable battle. And for the Hamas, it is a battle that even if they will lose that battle, they will succeed to really create an epos of a last heroic battle. And therefore, it will be not easy for the IDF.
Indeed. Well, there might be another battle after this battle. It all depends on the situation in the field. We do know that the central camp, so to speak, are also having some last pockets or splinters of terror operatives there as well.
Yes, of course, there is something beyond that last battle, but even though everyone aware about the possibility to another stage of another battle, they are taking that battle as a central with very extraordinary importance.
Indeed. Well, General Shafir, I'd like to ask you particularly about a very large, relatively large these days, but a air campaign against Hezbollah terror infrastructure that was launched yesterday afternoon and took for quite some time and brought about some devastation to Hezbollah's terror infrastructure in southern Lebanon. What can you tell us about that?
The Israeli Air Force is doing a lot of reconnaissance and analysis, obviously, with the intelligence community to find out the routes of the weapon flow into Lebanon, probably Iranian based, and the way they're trying to rebuild their forces and also direct and prepare for some kind of a civilian war against the Lebanese army. And so Israel is interested in limiting the power of Hezbollah to inflict damage to Lebanon itself, the Lebanese forces, and help in a, I would say, under the table way to help the Lebanese army overcome Hezbollah. That by pursuing Hezbollah, rebuilding of their forces, their fortresses, their manpower, and munitions flow, and other elements such as communication in a steady search and destroy operation using mostly RPVs, but also fighters, and taking out their possibilities not only in southern Lebanon, which is by right, because that is part of the agreement, the old agreement from about 16 or 17 years ago, but also in the Bekaa Valley, and also using the fact that the Syrian government is hostile to Hezbollah. So all these are able to create pressure on Hezbollah and leverage that will work for the Lebanese government exercising its sovereignty all over the Lebanon, but particularly in the southern part of Lebanon. And this is part of the ongoing operation that we will see until some kind of resolution is reached.
First of all, Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam did call on the international community to block Israel's launch of this operation prior to it taking place, in light of the fact that Israel did warn the residents of southern Lebanon to get out of the specific targeting locations, and announced that that is going to happen. And when it comes to Lebanon, I think it's quite clear for Israel, it's a matter of security. For Syria, at least the Damascus regime in Syria, it's a matter of revenge. And for Lebanon, it's a matter of sovereignty. So there is here a quite interesting dynamic playing out. But nonetheless, General Kimmett, President Joseph Aoun is quite vigorous in his approach to try and convince, of course, America and France that the Lebanese armed forces do have the capacity to disarm Hezbollah in the next year and a half, give or take. I remain skeptical, unfortunately, but please inseminate some type of optimism, if you will.
I have no optimism to share. Look, if Hezbollah was willing to disarm, two soldiers in a truck could just go collect all those weapons that they would hand in voluntarily, or with some sort of reward at the end of that. But the fact remains is, I think most people recognize that despite the amount of money that the United States is flooding in to help arm, train, and equip the Lebanese armed forces, which we have done for years and years, I don't believe that Hezbollah is willing to disarm, and I also don't believe the Lebanese armed forces are willing to fire one bullet to ensure that Hezbollah disarms. So if you're looking for optimism from my end, I'm afraid I can't provide it.
I was also somewhat pessimistic about your optimism in this context, but who knows? Anyways, General Cohen, does that mean that we are on an inevitable, I wouldn't say inevitable, but on a discourse towards some type of civil confrontation, even on a level of civil war?
Lebanon. Everyone in Lebanon really afraid from a new civil war. They suffered a lot in the last decades from all that engagement. And even the Lebanese army commanders are aware about that risk. They don't want to really come to it. So they are trying to achieve that mission without gliding to a new civil warfare and without losing the control. Therefore, with Mark, I can take the pessimistic view regarding the chance that it will happen, but maybe it will not absolutely not happen. It means that all that pressure, even if it will not bring Hezbollah to be disarmed, it will make a pressure that will brought them to really be very careful about using their weapon. And this is also something very important.
Absolutely. Well, we're drawing near to the end of the program. We have roughly 2 minutes for each of you. And I'd like to touch still on three countries. One, Gerald Shafir, if I may start with you. Yemen has launched multiple projectiles in the last 72 hours, including unmanned aerial vehicles and ballistic missiles. What can you tell us about that? And isn't there time to bring about a true response to this issue?
Well, let's start from the last part of your question. A true response would be a ground operation. Without going into details, a ground operation that will, I would say, surprise the leaders and the command posts of the Houthis in Yemen itself. And this, I don't want to go into actual details of how this can be done, but that is the way to eradicate most of the elements or the dangers. That would also include a lot of reconnaissance that is more or less available through different means or different collaborations with other countries. That is a decision that depends on the nuisance level of the Houthis. So far, the nuisance level is every couple of days, sirens going off, or some warnings towards sirens that may go off, and those missiles that would be fired and shot down by the Israeli or American based anti-missile missiles. And that is one side. The other one is drones that are sent from Yemen. It takes them about 8 hours to reach the area, and most of them are shot down either by helicopters or Iron Dome or fighters. So the nuisance level is there. It's pretty low, and when you consider the war in Gaza, it could be kind of treated like some kind of a fly around that bites every now and then, doesn't cause that much damage. So that is a decision that may be taken, or biting the bullet and waiting for the war in Gaza to bear fruit. So I would say that these are the pros and cons, whether we want to go full scale inside there or just be reactive.
Thank you, General Shafir, General Kimmett, and General Akohen. I'd like to ask both of you to give a little bit of insight into the situation vis-a-vis Syria, since there was a roadmap announced by Ambassador Tom Barak, U.S. envoy to Syria, as well as the Syrian or Damascus foreign minister, the interim one, and the Jordanian foreign minister and deputy premier, announcing a roadmap to resolve the situation in southern Syria. Israel wasn't involved and didn't have any input into this, despite this being its sphere of influence. And the Druze, who were the aggrieved, were also not involved in this. Apparently, the culprit committing the massacre of more than 2,000 murdered is the one to dictate the course ahead.
Well, listen, I guess I'm dumber than a box of rocks, but there's some issues right now that, to me, are just I can't understand the U.S. foreign policy. We're trying to plump up the Lebanese government for the purposes of a fool's errand, which is to disarm Hezbollah. We're embracing the arrival of the great Syrian hope this week at UNGA. And now I learn that the United States is negotiating with the Taliban for the return of the base at Bagram in Afghanistan. So there must be some strategic policy that's being considered in the United States that goes well beyond my thinking. And I think that roadmap is just one element of this great master plan that I can't help you with because it's much more refined than I would think it is.
Well, yeah. General Cohen, your take on this? You have 1 minute.
Yes, it is a basic dilemma whether the stability of Syria in the future will come from bringing the conditions for one big united Syria without any possibility for self-identity and autonomy for minorities like the Kurds, the Alawis and Druze, or maybe exactly the opposite. The stability of Syria will come just due to respecting the differences of minorities and giving them a kind of autonomy. It doesn't mean that they will be separated from Syria, but their capability to exist with self-respect to their culture and to their tradition, this in itself will create a new atmosphere in Syria, better from all dimensions of human rights.
Well, the jihadists of Damascus disagree about the latter, and they say they will burn Syria to the ground just like Assad did, if that were to be the case. But unfortunately, generals, all three of you, we have come to the end of the program. I'd like to thank General Hakohen, General Kemet, and General Shafir for all of your insights today. And I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Wishing you a Shana Tova from here in Jerusalem, a Happy New Year, the Hebrew calendar, of course, and a Shabbat Shalom.